Hello and welcome to our coverage of the 2014 U.S. Championship and U.S. Women's Chess Championship here in the capital of chess in America, St. Louis. We're in the beautiful Central West End, right across the street from the World Chess Hall of Fame, at the St. Louis Chess Club, and we're in round 5 of the U.S. Championship and round 4 of the U.S. Women's. The ladies had a rest yesterday for Mother's Day, but they are back and ready to fight. As we see, the players have all arrived, getting ready, getting their final drink, final last thoughts. Remember yesterday, Gata Kamsky changed his mind about the opening 30 minutes before the round, so maybe they're making their last minute opening plans here as well. Big game today in the women's, and here we are. I'm Jennifer Shahadi. I'm with Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan, and we'll also have Grandmaster Maurice Ashley, and we'll be with you for the next week. The tournament's really just getting started.
Absolutely, and yesterday was the bloodiest of rounds, 4 decisive games out of 6. And what's our standings, Jen?
Well, in the U.S. Championship, we have a runaway leader, and it's not at all who we would have expected. 24-year-old Alexander Lenderman from New York. He's running away with it, 3.5 out of 4.
First place.
And that's a big score in the U.S. Championship. We see right behind him, we do have Timur Garayev, so he kept pace yesterday with a big win. Defending champion and pre-tournament favorite Gata Kamsky in 3rd place, and he's right there with Alexander Onashuk. And I think they might have some different faces there, but. And in the women's, we have no surprises at the top of the standings. Irina Krush and Anna Zatansky with 2.5 out of 3. But we do have a surprise right behind. 13-year-old Iswaran, a wild card in this event, is really impressing. She has 2 wins and 1 loss. And today, she is playing against the other wild card in the field, Alyssa Melakina, and Grandmaster Maurice Ashley has more for us on that and other key matchups.
Indeed, Jen, young Ashrita Iswaran playing in her first championship, all of 13 years old, tied for 3rd place behind the perennial leaders. And she is just too cute for words, but deadly on the chessboard, playing amazing moves, capturing all our hearts with her fantastic ideas, her determination, her stick-to-itiveness. And she is playing against the other wildcard, Alyssa Melahina, in this matchup. She's got to feel good about this pairing. After all, Melahina is not the highest-rated player in the event, so she's got to have good chances to fight. But Melahina herself won the last game, so she must be also feeling pretty confident going into this matchup. So we'll keep our eye on those ladies as we proceed. Now, on the men's side, definitely a key matchup is the game between Timur Garayev, number 2 in the tournament, and Gev-Akobian, number 4 in the tournament. These are 2 powerhouses, 2 players who certainly think they can win the championships. Garayev right behind Lenderman. Now he has white again. He blew his white in the first game against Kamsky. And Akobian, on the other hand, hasn't won a game as yet. So he's looking for his first victory. Maybe it's today so that he can get back into the leaders' circle. So great matchups for the players today here at the championships. Round 5 is definitely heating up. Back to you, Jen and Yaz.
Thank you, Maurice. Of course, our tournament leader, Alexander Lenderman, will be competing against Sergei Ehrenberg. So that's the other game that we really want to keep our eye on. But I agree that Garayev Akobian matchup, that game will have my attention. And in the women's, who is Irina Krush playing again today? Because she's the tournament leader as well as Anna.
That's right.
And
well, they're both playing against the basement players, Kamila Bahanskaiti, who's had a tough time of it so far, although
having lost to Iswaran, yeah.
That's right, and Irina's, and here we have them, and Irina's actually got the white pieces in this game. But Kamila, considering the rating and just title differences, she's played pretty well against Irina in the past.
Exactly.
So I think that this will be more interesting than you might think looking at the ratings and the scores.
Sure, exactly.
And then, meanwhile, Anna Zatansky also white against Victoria Ni, who also only has half a point. Mm-hmm. So there could be a lot of blood in the women's championship, although there always is, but this round especially, they both need to keep pace with each other.
Precisely, that's exactly right. When you're playing a lower rated player in these events, you want to get your points as whenever you can, of course, but when you have white, you want to put that extra pressure on your opponent. Let's get into the game for a second.
Yeah, I think we're just about to get moves here.
All right.
We're just getting our moves, and I'm really curious about the openings in some of our key championship battles. We've got Gev-Akobian. You know, Friedel Onishuk interests me as well. Onishuk now with 2.5 points out of 4 could also get right in there. So where do you want to start? Gev, looks like you're pulling up Gev-Akobian.
Sure, because this is the number 2 and number 4 seeded players going into the event. Gariev is beginning to catch fire, having won 2 on the trot, and Akobian playing very solid, but in a sense, fearing that he may be drawing his way out of the event for successive draws.
That's right. I mean, and yesterday he was totally surprised in the opening.
Against Josh Friedel.
That's
On the
right.
other hand, a grandmaster who he has troubles with, so maybe not so unhappy with the draw. Timur opened up with Queen Pawn opening, D2, D4, E7, E6. We know that Akobian likes to play the French, so this is an invitation for White to play E2, E4, which would lead to a French. Timur kept it in the channels of the Queen's Pawn opening by playing C4, and we have Knight F6.
Are there any other advantages to this move order besides that? So, of course, there's the French, but otherwise, why not just play Knight F6? Is there some other benefit?
Well, in a sense, you can...
One move back, right?
Yeah. Well, in a sense, if you're not afraid to play the French defense, after the move C4, you could take it into those variations with an early queenside fianchetto where you haven't yet committed your pawn. That is to say, you haven't committed your knight so that your
Right.
pawn has the move F7, F5. Also, just in this particular position, instead of the knight moving to F3, you can go into those channels of a Bogo Indian variation, bishop B4 check, where also, once again, you haven't really committed your knight to F6 yet. For example, after a move like knight BD2, again, you might go into some kind of a Dutch-like setup with F7, F5. Let me just put a few moves. So there are reasons why Akobian might want to keep his options open, but
And
it's
don't
still
forget
so early.
Yeah, I think he did play Knight F6 anyway, though, but I
Right.
just thought of one other reason. Maybe he wanted to avoid the Trompowsky, which we saw yesterday.
Well, there you go. The Trompowsky is what Gata Kamsky played, which was to play the bishop out very early on move 2 to the G5 square.
And it's also a possible move after Knight F6 to play Bishop G5 immediately, whereas, of course, after
Exactly.
E6, it's not recommended.
The queen protects the square G5. So let's see. So it seems to me they've gotten to the Queen's Gambit
Anyway,
declined position
so-
anyway. And let me bring up more moves in that game, if they have been played. And indeed, the players have been moving right along.
So this is a very classical opening.
Yeah, let's go again from the start. So we have the Queen's Gambit declined, early capture on D5, releasing the tension. In principle, I always like playing the black side when my opponent's captured on D5 early, because that does give black the option of developing his bishop on C8. Oftentimes in this defense, the bishop on C8 has difficulties finding a good square. And with this move, Queen C2, we see what White's idea is to restrict that bishop from developing to the F5 square. So bishop E7, all of these moves are very standard. We're here. I think we're up to date on our board. Most common that I'm aware of is like, say, H7, H6 in castles. You can sometimes save the move H6. And the idea from Black's point of view is to play rook E8 and jump with his knight to the E4 square, forcing trades. So still, they're deep in opening theory. We can expect these two players to be very, very familiar with the opening for at least the next 10 moves, dozen moves.
So you say that you kind of you prefer this for black.
No, I say that I like it when I'm black and White makes that early decision to release the tension between the pawns on C4 and D5, because I like the fact that now I know that I'm going to put this bishop on C8 somewhere along this diagonal. So I think that white's early trade makes black's life a little bit easier than in the regular variations where the tension is kept.
Okay, so to make that distinction, you don't think this is the most testing line, but you still think white has a slight pull.
That's
why.
right.
So you don't prefer black. You just
Right.
Yeah.
I prefer to play black when my opponents are willing to
Right.
take on d5 so early. Let's
Okay.
see our tournament leader.
Yeah, for
Lindemann.
such strong players to give up the opening advantage as white so early is going to be very rare.
Exactly. And Sergei Ehrenberg in
This
this
looks like
game.
some kind of Sicilian.
Absolutely. Open sail Sicilian. King pawn opening e2, e4.
This will be a game to watch.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. c5, a very combative defense, the Sicilian, favored by most of the world's elite chess grandmasters, the Sicilian. Knight f3, d6, and it looks like we're heading down. No, the classical, the Bobby Fischer favorite when he was black, he loved to play the Najdorf defense, a7, a6, but the classical Sicilian with the 4 knights, keeping this move a7, a6 in reserve, and in the meantime just putting pressure on d4. The most challenging, bishop g5, was played, e7, e6, and these moves, queen d2, preparing to castle queenside, which white has done. Knight takes d4, queen takes d4, castles kingside. So now we love these types of games where the kings are on opposite flanks and both players will try to marshal their forces to attack one another's king as quickly as possible.
I'm really excited about this though because Lenderman doesn't play the Sicilian, does he? I mean,
No, I'm not.
I mean, he plays like the French and
Caro
sometimes?
and closed variations. So
the Caro Khan, the French. So suddenly
he's
deciding to play the Lenderman. He's
Lenderman.
deciding to play the Sicilian in one of the most important games of his life. He's got 3.5 out of 4. He's leading the championship already.
Mm-hmm.
He decides, why not with black? Let's just play the most aggressive opening in chess and castle opposite side. So to the contrary, he's not coasting on his lead.
No,
he's not resting on his laurels. He's saying, maybe
let's
I
have a
should-
big fight. Let's have a
Yeah.
big fight and let's just go for it.
And I think that's a wise decision because, we were talking about future rounds and he's got some tough pairings coming up for him, doesn't he?
Exactly. When we were off camera, Maurice and I were discussing it. Maurice had studied the pairings, and Lenderman's going to be facing a real test. I don't want to steal Maurice's thunder by letting you in on what Maurice has.
You can also look up the pairings on the website,
Well, he's got-
uschesschamps.com.
he's got
But
some
here, what do you
insights.
think, Maurice?
Indeed, Jen, it is going to be a tough road to hoe after this for Lenderman because he's still got to face Gata Kamsky. He still has to face Onishchuk, and he also has to face Akobian. So those are 3 of the top 4 players in the contest. So he's got to be thinking, man, I've had to do well now because he's facing 2 of those players, Onishchuk and Kamsky, with the black pieces back to back. That's going to be rough. Nobody wants to face those guys back to back with the black pieces. You could go 0-2 easily and be knocked way back in the competition. So he wants to put his foot on the gas pedal right now and take some initiative. So that's why he's playing the way he's playing. But I'm really impressed by his opening play. So far, he's been the most innovative of all the players in the championship. And now he's playing this line in the Sicilian, surprising all of us. I wanted to just bring up this position from his game against Robson, where he also outprepared Robson and got this dominant position, these 2 passed pawns in the game. And he finished it off kind of nicely with this move, rook to g8 check. Robson resigned because after knight takes, pawn takes, asking for a queen, and it's clear that after king takes, this nice move, e7, discovered check to the king, and the king cannot approach the pawn, and he would get a queen and win the game very easily. So Lenderman absolutely playing fresh chess, original chess, the most entertaining chess of all on the men's side, seems very confident playing going into his round 5 game today. Back to you guys.
Completely agree with you there, Maurice, that Lenderman has definitely done his homework for this championships, and the openings that he's been getting and playing have been perfect because his homework has paid off big time for him in several of his victories. And,
That's right.
And today, the element of surprise is so important, a key, in fact, when top grandmasters are playing against one another, because you, the player who are being surprised, have the feeling that, oops, you're walking into something, and you, the player who playing an unexpected defense or attack, feel good as well. So let's just review.
Yeah, let's take a look at this opening. This, I think Irina Krush also plays this opening a lot, and they're both good friends. And they actually share the same coach, Georgi Kashashvili.
That's right.
So
Okay.
it's probably just a coincidence because Irina plays a lot of things now, and I think it's really a cool choice of Sicilians because there's so many different ones. But this one is really solid, but it's not quite up there. I think in terms of the Najdorf is the one that people are studying.
Counter-aggressive attacking ideas of the Najdorf based on b5 and b4.
Yeah, they might be studying that one a little bit more. So if you're going to surprise them,
a little bit offbeat is a nice surprise. So we saw this last move by White, which was just a second.
It's almost the nameless Sicilian because some people call it the classical or the two knights.
I kind of call it the classical or four-knight Sicilian.
Four-knight Sicilian,
right.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't have like one of those romantic names like the Dragon or the Sveshnikov.
Yeah. So bishop c4, just developing the piece, developing the bishop, connecting the rooks. Very nice. White's opening is finished. Black does likewise. Bishop d7, connecting his rooks. And now we see that with this bishop on g5, pinning this knight to this bishop, Sergei advanced with his pawn, e4, e5, with the idea after trade, Black has a problem. The bishop is on the d7 square. The knight cannot move, because if the knight did move, it would cost Black a piece. White would be a bishop ahead in this line, but Black has a crafty little resource in this position. This bishop comes to this very nice diagonal, long diagonal, putting potential pressure on this g2 pawn, but certainly a nice safe square for the bishop. And now the pawn cannot capture the knight because this queen eyeballs this bishop on g5, and oops, the bishop falls with check, as well as the pawn on f6.
And Black will be up a pawn and with a dominant position with that bishop just raking over the board.
Precisely so. So White, recognizing that his bishop is under potential threat to the queen on g5, drop back with his bishop, bishop d2. And this is a nasty move too, because it sets up the potential for the knight coming to d5 with a discovered attack against Black's queen. We're still deeply into theory. Bishop c5 has been played.
Yeah, we should point out also that just if bishop takes f6.
Pardon me?
Just because
yes.
I always want to look at all the captures and everything,
Sure.
that you have a similar motif. If bishop takes f6, now after,
the recapture.
After the recapture, now after pawn takes f6, you still have queen to g5 check.
Right.
And that's why so many grandmasters like to play king b1 at some point in these Sicilians so that these types of things don't creep up every second.
Precisely. Now this is actually a kind of a different animal altogether, in a sense, with the both kings on opposite sides, castled on opposite sides. In principle, White is very happy to get rid of this very important pawn on g7, opening up Black's king a bit. The problem is that bishop on f6 is such a great defender of the king, and is also playing an offensive role as well. So this is why the move bishop takes f6 is frowned upon by grandmasters. They don't really like that move.
So instead we see this line bishop d2, and as you point out, a lot of theory. This is going to be really an exciting game. We do have some viewer mail. We encourage you to keep it up. The hashtag US Chess Champs if you're on Twitter. You can tweet at us or Twitter us, as Yasser would say.
Twitter us.
And we also have an email address, comments@stlouischessclub.org, if you would prefer to go that route. Snail mail, not going to work. So, do you think age has helped or hurt prospects against older, younger opponents? And that's from Ethan Hay from St. Louis. I think that's one of our youngsters.
Well, thank you, Ethan. I genuinely believe that chess is a young person's game. And that you're seeing, for example, Magnus Carlsen today, one of the youngest world champions ever. You're seeing it in this event where the U.S. Championship is featuring, I think all the players are just under 40 years of age, am I accurate?
That's right, yeah. Gata Kamsky is 39 years old.
Exactly.
And Onishuk is 38.
So this is one of the youngest U.S. championships since the 70s at least. And, you know, I played in U.S. championships with the likes of Robert Byrne, who was in the 60s, Boris Golko in his 50s, Leonid Shamkovich, Anatoly Lane, much older players. So I definitely believe that age is a huge factor today, and that the reason for that is the energy levels. When you play chess, you really use a lot of energy, and it's the young players who are able to rebound easier and quicker after an exhausting 5-6 hour game.
Now, there are things that older players can do to mitigate that, like Alexander Onishuk pointed out when he was down here, and he certainly doesn't look like he's pushing 40. I mean, he looks great.
Right.
And he's a triathlete. So he said he actually thinks the longer tournament benefits him. He didn't say it because he's so modest, but he was implying that it's because he's in very good shape. And he's also probably one of the best prepared players. So I feel that he's probably not burning a lot of energy between the games, looking at variations.
Right.
I think he's going back to his room, sleeping.
Relaxing and exercising.
So we don't want to discourage any of the older folks out there. You know, chess is a game that you can enjoy at all ages. And one thing I've noticed from teaching adult students, even though usually they don't have any prospects to become world champion, if you don't learn when you're young, it's hard to become like the best of the best. But they tend to appreciate the beauty of chess a little bit more because they have studied art and music, and they just kind of get it. They get that harmony. It really excites them.
Right.
So almost the difficulty of it makes it more fun in a way.
And the aesthetic appreciation for really beautiful combinative play. Yeah, I'll go along with that. But again, I would just sum it up by saying, yes, age is a very big factor, especially at the highest levels.
And I think we have another question. With all the talented youth we have, what do we feel is necessary in order to have a U.S. player as a top contender in the years to come? From Ryan Harmson on chess.com, one of our sponsors.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Definitely the answer to that one is very, very simple. Opportunity. Opportunity to play the strongest players, opportunity to play in great events, great tournaments, and this U.S. Championship is just such an event. And the idea, if we could have more events like the U.S. Championships taking place with great prize money, encouraging young people to become professional chess players, that's the answer right there.
And we should point out that we already do have a top contender, Hikaru Nakamura, and I think we've got a lot of potential top contenders, really just some wonderful young players in America. I don't really want to single anyone out, but there's that Young Stars program.
You got to mention Ray Robson, Sam Shanklin.
And even if we go younger,
Alexander Olenchuk. And then if you go younger, a wonder.
There's a Wander Liang, absolutely incredible. Sam
Sevian. Trofe is just marvelous.
Yeah, so there's a lot of possibilities. Which one of them will step up and become a world contender like Nakamura? We don't know, but having that multiplicity, that larger base,
it's fantastic. It's a blessing.
It increases our odds a lot.
Absolutely. But then you take a look at, for example, Daniel Naroditsky, absolutely wonderful talent, 18 years old, but hey, you just got accepted to Stanford. I was going to say Sanford, but just accepted to Stanford, recently announced winner of the Sanford Fellowship. He's going to take a year sabbatical from school to try his very best to become, a world-class player like Hikaru. So we're doing really well with the group of players we have, and also in the ladies' game too. I like this young lady, Miss Cheng from Texas. I think that she's just fantastic, and she comes from a chess-playing family. In fact, her brother is a chess master as well. So it's like, Sarah, shout out to her. I like to see her pursue chess as a profession.
So yeah, we're doing pretty well, and but we shouldn't rest on our laurels. Just like Lenderman, let's keep playing the Sicilian, metaphorically. And we've got more from Grandmaster Maurice Ashley, who is also an amazing promoter of the game.
Thanks, Jen. Well, we have another young player that we have to keep our eye on, 13-year-old Ashrita Eswaran, and she is definitely one to watch for the future. However, in this game, she might have walked into some serious opening preparation that she did not know, she was not familiar with. It's actually not that uncommon a line in the Sicilian. She's playing against Alyssa Melahina, and Melahina is playing her pet line against the Sicilian. She doesn't like to play the open Sicilian at all. She always plays this kind of variation in the closed. And from this position, Melahina played the move A3. Now, it might look like an unnatural move, stopping a knight from going to B4. Knight wasn't planning to go there at all, but there is some poison in this move. And after playing this move E6, which is a little bit funny playing it at this stage, but it is playable still, Melahina essayed the move B4, a pawn sacrifice that's virtually poisonous to take. If you do capture this pawn on B4, thinking that you're winning material, you face this monster move, E5, and your position starts to look quite creaky. Look at all those holes in the position. A knight ready to go to E4, to D6, a bishop landing on A3. That's going to be monstrous. Very good position for white. Typical pawn sacrifice in this line. Unfortunately, in this position, she played so she did play B4. Unfortunately, she played the move D6 in response. That's not the key response here. The better response, more popular, is the move B6. That way you keep your pawn on D7, preparing to go to D6. You have that extra pawn in the center of the board. This is a wing pawn trying to trade off for a more centralized pawn. So that's why you need to equalize matters with your wing pawn as well. Unfortunately, she didn't do so. She played D6, and Melahina pounced. She took immediately on this square and then played the monster move, E5, and now there's no D pawn to counter that pawn on E5. So right now, this pawn is a bone in her throat. The threat of knight to E4, attacking this pawn, threatening to go into D6 is in the position. The youngster finds herself on the defensive. It's only move 8, and certainly Melahina is thinking, wow, this is a great chance for me to win another game and get back to even in these championships. We'll see, though, because the young player has been fighting for her life in other games as well. She's shown incredible tenacity. Maybe she'll be able to do so in this game. There's still a lot of game to go. Back to you guys.
How should we say? Age matters, yes, but so does experience. I think that move D7, D6 by Eswaran is just a reflection that she's not that experienced in this position, and she may have been, obviously she was, in fact, surprised in the opening. I was just going to turn to another game for a moment between two really, I'm hoping that they will be great stars and future Olympic team players. Ray Robson, who has, of course, represented the United States in play, and Daniel Naroditsky are battling. And one of the big problems for King Pawn players today has been the Berlin defense. We saw it here at the Sinquefield Cup, for example, when Hikaru Nakamura faced off against Magnus Carlsen. Hikaru was unable to cause black any problems. And Ray Robson has come up with a pawn sacrifice to start the game. So definitely some opening preparation has been done by Ray. We see king pawn opening, king pawn defense, a Ruy Lopez, and now this move knight f6, known for the better part of a century and a half. Black makes a counterattack against the pawn on e4. White castles, black takes the pawn, d4, knight d6. Everybody and his brother has been reaching this position for the better part of 150 years, and everybody has regained the pawn.
We get this endgame.
And you get the...
Which we've seen so many times.
So
We saw
many
this in the
times.
Sinquefield Cup. We see this in World Championships.
This opening defense has dominated top-level chess basically since the year 2000, when Vladimir Kramnik made that extraordinary upset in his World Championship match with Garry
There was also a big
Kasparov.
historical point for this opening. You know, it was the first time that a woman beat a world champion.
Oh,
With
yes.
Judith Polgar beating
Judith.
Gary Kasparov.
Exactly. I was the team captain for that match. Judith was playing for the rest of the world against Russia. And it actually has a very funny story because we knew that this matchup between Judith and Gary was going to take place later in the day. It was a rapid chess game where you played four games a day. And I said to Judith, I want you to stay at the hotel, work with Viktor Korchnoi, prepare for Gary Kasparov. You're not playing today, you're playing one game, only against Gary. She was so mad at me. Oh, you're taking me out of the lineup. I want to play, I want to play, I want to play. I said, no, Judith, you're gonna prepare with Viktor.
I can see why she was mad.
Yeah, you're going to prepare with Viktor, and you're going to come with all guns blazing. You're going to play the greatest chess player in the world, Gary Kasparov, and you're going to win. She said, okay. She came to the game. She blasted him off the board. I came up behind her as she was signing the score sheet. She got up, and she gave me a big hug, and she says, I'm back in the lineup now, right?
Love it. That's a great story.
Yes, Judith, you're going to play
So
tomorrow.
basically, you're a great feminist. You were part of what made this historic event where the first woman won against a world champion.
I think it was all Judith. And Viktor Korchnoi helped prepare her, by the way.
Oh, what a legend.
But okay,
so
we get this.
Instead of playing bishop takes c6, pawn takes c5, you know,
Which,
Ray can't be happy with that. He loves to attack.
Exactly.
He said it himself. Although you said all guns blazing, Judith crushed Gary, even with queens off the board.
Exactly.
You can make a lot of excitement happen.
For sure. And that was a truly historic and exciting game. But Ray didn't follow the play that, again, for 150 years, bishop takes c6 has been the standard move. He has played bishop a4, having dropped his, lost a pawn on e4. Daniel said, fine, thank you for the pawn. I'll advance my pawn, e5, e4, attacking the knight. The knight jumped into the center, and now the theoreticians are busily looking at their chess engines, trying to guess, does Ray have enough for his pawn's sacrifice? Very creative sacrifice. This early in the game, shocking to me. This is a big thing. And I know white players, king pawn players, would be so pleased if this line of play for white were to give him an advantage. Oh, you would see a whole lineup of people patting Ray on the back and saying thank you very much because we're tired of the Berlin ending. I'm going to have to toss it to Maurice to get his insights on this position and to ask him what he thinks the computer thinks of this enterprising pawn sacrifice.
Well, let's get him set up.
Okay,
yeah, but,
sure.
You know, one thing that other people have tried against the Berlin is that thing with rook e1, you know?
Yeah, and
But
that's
that never
so
really,
lame. Oh, that's
you keep queens on the board, but it's just
but,
not a lot is happening, right?
what Jennifer is referring to is an earlier move that
Instead of d4, rook e1, right?
Hikaru played this move against Magnus in the Singfil Cup, and you get all of these trades, but the position is so gosh darn balanced. What we're seeing now is a repeat
or
of that game.
Or sometimes bishop d3, but
yeah, or even bishop d3.
But I think, yeah, in the Singfield Cup it was bishop f1, but I've seen bishop d3 before too, which is a little bit more caveman. You're trying to make something happen on h7, but it's very thin. Because the position is just so symmetrical.
Exactly. Just look at the pawn structure. The only open file in the position is the e file. Black is going to move castle, move his bishop, put his rooks on the e file, and that'll be the chopping block, and half the army is going to be traded along the e file.
So it's kind of strange how you keep queens on the board, so that seems like it makes it more exciting, but it actually makes it drier because you trade off so many pieces and you keep the symmetry.
Exactly.
So winning chances in chess does not always correlate with trades.
True.
Usually there's some correlation, but not always.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a moment to meet the players and find out how they've been preparing for this tournament.
I'm feeling great to be back here in St. Louis. The U.S. Championship is my favorite event by far. You play consistently strong opposition. There's no free games. It's always a challenge right from day one.
This is my first U.S. Championship. It is my first visit to St. Louis as well, and so far I like it.
Everyone is a grandmaster here, and most people who are playing here have beaten me before, so it's going to be a very tough tournament.
My approach to chess, as cliche as it sounds, is just to play as many good games as possible. I've tried setting goals before, and all it does is pretty much sort of constrict my play.
It's going to be probably one of the last chances for me to win, so I guess my goal is to win.
Coming into this tournament, you're always thinking games, preparation, openings, middle game, tactics. You want everything to be solid, but I'm still trying to be realistic and just get it one game at a time.
My emphasis in the game is to learn and improve. It's interesting to challenge yourself and play stronger opponents, and that's definitely something you find in the US Championship.
I think it's maybe just the feeling of being back in St. Louis again. It's just a really, really pleasant feeling. The weather is great. It's so, you can really feel that it's summer here. It's not like that in New York.
Well, this year, I'm really trying to win the tournament. I've come close many times, so I think this might be the year I actually win the tournament.
Each year I compete in the championships. It's becoming harder and harder to prepare. I just finished with my law school exams 2 days before arriving for the championship.
Of course I will try to win, but I have to be realistic. I didn't play like any serious tournament since last US championship. I had a break from chess, so I will do my best. I do what I can.
The thing is that this is just one game I play with them, so it doesn't matter that they might be better objectively. It's how we play the one single game, so I want to put all my efforts to do just the best I can.
I really like it because it's really fun playing against new people and I get to make new friends.
My goal this year is to play fighting chess and not have a single regret with any game that I play.
My dad said, he said to play well. So that's what I'm going to try to do. Not just to get lucky, but to try to make some good moves.
Well, I love the little bows in Ashritha's hair.
I like the curls.
She's got the little
Marina's.
pink one now. And then, yeah, you see that little pink bow. Oh, adorable.
Mm-hmm.
But don't let that fool you.
No. She's a tigress on the other side of the board. But she, like Maurice was saying earlier, this wing gambit idea, b4, came as a surprise. And now she's in a little bit of difficulty as they start the fourth round.
Well, pawn sacrifices abound this round, and
yes,
we've got Maurice with some thoughts on both of those pawn sacrifices, perhaps,
all right,
or one of them.
Indeed, I've been studying this position, and I'm not sure that she was out-prepared. When you look at it with a computer, Houdini's saying black is actually okay. She played this interesting move after the pawn sacrifice. We saw the move e5. She went straight after this spearhead pawn with the move f6, which is exactly what Houdini recommends. So this move was played, and now this move bishop to b5, which I think has only been seen once or twice before, immediately played. Actually, it was only played once before. In this position, the person played bishop to d7. That's what I recall. But in this moment, the youngster played the move knight ge7. She could have also taken it on e5, but by playing this way, she's giving only, according to Houdini, a small edge to white. It's not so easy for white to exploit this position. Of course, knight e4 is a very challenging move here, but after takes and takes, she can simply castle. And although her one pawn is not so strong on e6, white's pawn is not so powerful either on e5, and black is extremely well developed. So here it looks as though black is absolutely just fine in this line. So we'll see, maybe she's out-prepared the preparer in this position. So all looks fine there. If we go to another position, we see in the Robson game, the pawn sacrifice that occurred here. This one, Houdini is saying slight advantage to white, down a pawn. Interesting line because, of course, we see white is down a pawn, but this e4 pawn is not going anywhere anytime soon. The only way to really keep that pawn is to play the move f5. But against this move, the computer likes a simple check, king goes over, and then just play chess like nothing happened, bishop to f4. The rationale here to me is this piece, the bishop on c8, taking time to get into the game, and this piece, the knight on d6, not really well placed. Meantime, all of white's forces are extremely active. Black certainly can't feel badly. There are no real serious weaknesses in the position for black to worry about, but it's going to take some time to unravel. So it looks like in that line, the pawn sacrifice is more or less equal. I want to share with you another position that's fascinating, this one between Nemkova and Foyser. Look at this opening. Check this out. It was a simple modern defense, play in development. How often do you see this pawn sacrifice? D5, right out of the opening, donating a pawn. Well, of course, knight takes is not so easy. Let me just get that going. Knight takes is not so easy here because of the move c6, and this d pawn will be recaptured. Whether or not it's better for white is a different question. But here white said, wait a minute, that looks like a pawn. Black played knight f6, bishop to c4, and now the move knight b d7, trying to get the knight to b6 to attack the bishop and the pawn. Now bishop to g5, and after knight b6, bishop takes f6, getting rid of this attacker on this pawn. And after this trade, bishop to b3, a5, trying to disrupt the defender of the d pawn, a4, stopping that, and after simply castles, knight ge2, black is currently just down a pawn. The line, instead of castles that was recommended, that I saw when looking at the databases, was to move c6 here, instead of castles, to play c6 in this position, giving up this pawn for a lot of play. After this trade, black doesn't want to take here because the bishop will be on this beautiful diagonal, and then play out this endgame instead after captures, and pawn takes. And white has had a small advantage here due to the superior pawn structure on this side. But black's not playing that way at all. She's going into a completely different line with castles, knight ge2. She might be down a pawn, move 10 for a long time. Houdini's still saying equal, 0, 0, 0. Explain that one, Yaz. Back to you guys.
I'm not going to rise to that challenge because I don't understand it myself. I like the pawns. I do appreciate the two bishops as well. So I do think that there is a slight compensation, but 0, 0, 0, no, I don't see that. I just have on my screen a game that I've been following, Sergei Ehrenberg versus Alex Lenderman, our leader in the tournament. A few moves have been played. The last few moves, in fact, were after bishop c5 right here. Basically, what white wants to do is white wants to set up for this discovered attack with the move knight c3 to d5, a discovered attack against the queen, and to capture this bishop on e7, winning the two bishops as well as control over the dark squares in the center. Bishop c5 got the bishop out of the way, the reach of that knight, with a tempo against white's queen.
And now queen h4 and queen f4 are possible, but he played queen h4.
Queen h4 was the move, absolutely. Now the knight is well and truly under attack. There's no bishop on g5 hanging. The knight has been kicked away from the defense of black's king, and Sergei just said, okay, let me bring my rook into the game. The knight went back to attack the pawn. The pawn has been defended with the move rook e1. Yes, Jennifer?
Well, I was just going to say that I think knight e4 is often played there, so he switched it up a little bit with rook e1.
Excuse me, just in...
After knight d7.
Pardon me, I see. So, sorry, queen h4, knight d7. Now,
so
in this
now
moment...
white plays knight e4.
Knight e4 with an attack, with the discovered attack against black's queen, as well as attacking this bishop on, and this is the standard move as well, like these have been seen. So black could either move his queen back, queen b6, queen c7, or possibly bishop b4, offering a trade of queens. At the moment, not too many pieces hanging around defending black's king, but I could play maybe c3.
Takes b4. Well, I was
is there
play...
some trickies? Oh, okay. You got a tricky? for me?
Maybe not. I was just thinking bishop d3 looks dangerous.
Ah, yes, because you're setting up for a pretty nasty kind of discovered check here, going after my queen.
And bishop takes e4 doesn't look
Doesn't
sufficient
help.
because I'm still attacking d7 and h7.
Right. And I think I'm getting killed. I certainly would go into this with trembling hands. White's potential attack here looks pretty frightening. On the other hand, you're still in a pin, and I can't fault Sergei for just developing his rook and bringing his rook into the game. Different line of play.
Right, yeah, you want to go back and see how rook e1 plays out?
Sure, let's do that. So we do have in the game the move rook a1, e1, simply defending the pawn on e5 and keeping that discovered attack, knight e4, in the pocket, so to speak.
Or knight d5.
Or knight
depending
d5.
on the position, yeah. Now, the bishop on c4 doesn't leave much of an impression. It does defend a2, which is useful, but I think in a lot of positions it might retreat back to d3.
Yeah, but exactly. It might reposition itself. So let me just go back here and get rid of some arrows. The nice part, this bishop, at the moment, this diagonal is not that attractive. However, just as you've been mentioning, the bishop could step back to the d3 square when in combination with the queen, you'd be threatening a checkmate.
That being said, I also like Black's position. In the Sicilian, I typically like both sides, but...
Well, you just like the dynamic play that the Sicilian provides for both players.
But my gut feeling is that Black is doing okay here. I think it's exciting for both sides, but I don't think White has like some massive opening edge here, because Black has play of his own.
Oh, absolutely.
So the king being on c1.
Right.
And the ready-made open c-file and the active bishop on c5. I believe that this will be a very interesting game, but I'm still very happy with Lenderman's choice.
Exactly.
And we've got Maurice Ashley on another key game for our standings, Gev-Akobian.
Indeed, Jen. Well, just a quick note on a moment in this game that seems very strange to me. In this position, looked like everything was okay, and Akobian played this move, queen to g5. A bit of a strange move. In fact, let's go back just two moves in this position here, where the move knight takes on d6 had just occurred, and Gev played the move bishop to d3, a natural developing move, and normally you could also play the move knight to f3, of course, but then Akobian played this move, queen to g5, attacking this pawn, or so it looks. But the problem is, after knight to f3, taking on g2 would just end the game quite simply to king e2, and the queen is just nailed. No way it's getting out. It's totally trapped. Rook is coming over to trap it. Even rook h2 would trap it. That's just queen gone off the board. So I can't figure it out. Queen g5, the supernatural knight f3 just seems to gain a full tempo. Where is the queen planning to go? Maybe it's planning to go over to h5 now, take advantage of this moment in time. But a bit surprising to me to see this move on the board, Yaz. What do you think about such a funky-looking move? Knight f3 seems to really be a tester move that's easy to play. Gev is himself scratching his head, clearly wondering, why is this queen out here? It's just a straight pot shot I could get at this early queen move.
Absolutely, Maurice. I mean, we tell our students all the time, everywhere, that be careful, don't develop your queen too early, because you give your opponent an opportunity to gain, to develop with gain of tempo against the queen. Now, Var, when he played this move, queen g4, g5, I am certain, absolutely certain, he thought that the move queen takes g2 was a threat, and it's going to be an embarrassing situation where should Timur play the move knight f3, Var is going to say to himself, well, wait a minute. Why are you leaving your pawn on g2 unprotected? I just telegraphed my threat, and Var will realize that, just as you pointed out, queen takes g2, king e2, not a move that you often see, voluntarily giving up castles, but this king on e2 does protect the knight on f3, which is critical for setting up the trap rook H1, rook A1, G1, capturing the queen.
Move. Beautiful
really,
move, too. You know, really, it's an
easy move
talk about
to
double
miss.
attack. This is a really big. It's not really a double attack, but it's a double move, right?
Yeah.
Because it defends F3 and it connects the rooks.
Exactly.
And usually you don't see the king participating so actively.
Right, voluntarily moving up and giving up castle. So this is going to be an embarrassment for Var, because should knight F3 appear on the board, I'm afraid he's going to make a shamefaced retreat and just play queen E7, having handed his very powerful grandmaster opponent an extra tempo in the opening, and usually that's a very, very bad sign.
It's a bad sign, but I think a lot of it is psychological, because the position still shouldn't be awful, or like it shouldn't be losing just because he did that. But then the psychological impact of having to play queen G5, queen E7 is also a little bit devastating. Or do you think that white now has the time to castle queenside and really go at it?
Exactly. So the idea is, because white has the opening move, he has the advantage in the opening, and then it's really incumbent upon black to try to neutralize that opening advantage move. So by giving white yet another tempo, that opening advantage move really does jump up. And as you're saying, I would be very, very tempted to play castles, a double-edged move with the idea of just bringing my rook to the center.
That's right.
And blasting with E3, E4.
Well, sure, the sharper the position, the more likely that tempo is going to count.
And almost
right?
two
tempo.
Yeah, right.
Plus the opening move.
Plus the opening move. So I think Var, who has been super solid, Mr. Unbeatable with 4 draws, is in trouble, and Timur Gariev is picking up speed. Two back-to-back wins, and he's sitting in the driver's seat in this game.
Well, nobody is disappointed by the play of Gariev and Lenderman so far today. We have 2 leaders trying to
Do
increase
their
it.
utmost, yes.
And we're happy that here in St. Louis, in addition to our commentary, there's live commentary right next door at Leicester Sports Bar every day with Grandmasters Ben Feingold and Robert Hass. And every day we like to bring one of them on and tell us a little bit about the live atmosphere. Today we have Grandmaster Robert Hass, who's also a student at Yale and is the founder of Sports Quotient. And he is with Grandmaster Maurice Ashley.
Indeed, thanks, Jen. I'm with Grandmaster Robert Hess, who's just reminded me, I thought he'd only played in this a couple of times. He said, dude, 5. 5. I've been here 5 times. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Maurice.
So, Robert, first, let's just get right to it in this position. Knight F3, you can't take on G2. What's going on? This guy is a 2600 Grandmaster. Explain this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I was looking at the stats, and Gariev actually has a great score against Var, +2. He's beaten him out of 4 games. He's beaten him twice in 2 draws. So that probably is a psychological advantage for white here. And queen G5 is just a terrible blunder, because knight F3, the developing move, allows white to castle and just take over the center with no active play for black.
So how do you explain it? I mean, knight F3 is the first move you think of at any level. I mean, just what if I just develop, and then you start looking at that queen. It always looks scrumptious when a queen comes in to take on G2 or B2. You've got to look at that first.
Yeah, I think it's just a complete mental lapse here. I think Var's I'm going to attack G2, maybe let's go G3. But after knight F3, it's just all white here. And I think Gariev's really happy, licking his lips, biting his chops, trying to get at him.
Yeah, this could be a full point for him. Well, you said there are other games you were following, if I can pull some of those games up. This one you said you liked, the game between Ehrenberg and our leader, Lenderman. What do you think about this position?
Well, this position is very interesting. Lenderman never plays the Sicilian. He's clearly trying to out-prepare his opponents, get a huge advantage on the clock, which he has this game. But I actually like white's position here. Ehrenberg may have the least amount of points in the tournament, but a move like bishop to D3 here, I think gives Ehrenberg a good chance at an advantage.
Okay, indeed. So we got to watch that. But we've seen Lenderman, his preparation has been sparkling. I mean, every game it looks like, well, there's one game he really was lucky versus Gariev. Yeah. But other than that, he's just been playing some really interesting chess.
Yeah, he's been playing great chess. I also think it's the fast of the time. I think his time management is excellent. He's really out preparing his opponents, where he gets a huge advantage on the clock, and his opponents make some subpar decisions, allowing him to take advantage. I don't think this position actually favors him that much. It just, at the end of the day, once the clock starts winding down and Ehrenberg gets in time trouble, that's when you see the mistakes happen, and Lenderman's there to pick up the points.
Indeed, very important, the clock, especially with increments, to be able to manage that. we did see another game that was interesting, the game between Melahina and Eswaran. First, it looked really bad for Eswaran, but it looks like her position is kind of picked up.
Yeah, I mean, she's the youngest player in the tournament. I'm sure we've said this a million times. I've been quite impressed with her play. She's 2 out of 3. Nobody expected her to have that score after 3 rounds. Maybe that score at the end of the tournament, but after 3 rounds is amazing. But she clearly didn't understand the opening that well, but she's trying to fight back here. And it's tough when you are the youngest player, the lowest rated player, and playing someone who's as experienced as Alyssa Melahina. But I do like White's position here. The weak pawn on e6 kind of goes to White's advantage, but she's a fighter. We've seen her play till as many moves as possible. The last game done in more than 1 round, so she will not go down without a fight if she is going to go down here.
Indeed, she has definitely shown her fighting spirit. What about the top board? Well, I should say the top seed, Gata Kamsky. He finally got off the schneid, winning a game last round, but here it doesn't look like he's got much. It looks like typical Kamsky, make that draw with black and try to win with white situation.
Yeah, I mean, Gata's coming off a pretty nice win yesterday. The opening was a little shaky, but he came back in a storm. Really beat Ehrenberg pretty soundly. And here he's just trying to equalize. He's a very strong player. He knows with a black piece against someone as dangerous as Sam Shanklin, who's as well prepared as Sam Shanklin, I have to stabilize my position first before I can ever think about a win. And white does look to be slightly better, but it's Gata Kamsky with black. You have to trust his ability.
Indeed, optically it looks great, but no real weaknesses in black's position. What do you think about the overall situation? Do you think that Linderman, considering that he still has to play Kamsky, he still has to play Onishuk, he still has to play Akobian, do you think that he'll be able to maintain this play and keep a big lead in this competition? Or, especially since he is black against both Kamsky and Onishuk, that he might get pulled back at some point as the competition furthers along?
Yeah, and something you really have to start thinking about is Timur Gareev. He is half a point behind Lenderman coming into this round. He has a great position right now. And Timur has played Gata Kamsky already. I don't know when he plays Alex Onishuk or with what color, but Gareev seems to be very confident in his ability. And Lenderman is playing great chess. I mean, there's nothing you can say against the guy. He's playing really well. But as Grandmaster Ben Feingold keeps saying in our commentary, he has a history of actually kind of getting out to a lead and then unfortunately sliding towards the end of events. And we really hope that doesn't happen to him here. I mean, he's kind of a crowd favorite at the moment, really the underdog that nobody expected. But those pairings back-to-back, black against Kamsky and Onishuk later in the tournament, might really catch up to him, and we don't even know what's going to happen in this game here. So it's hard for me to predict in advance, but it really is hard for me to see him staying on top of the tournament.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much for your insights, Robert. Keep on doing that great commentary over at Lester's. I know you smell that good food while you work.
The free food is awesome over there.
Awesome. Grandmaster Robert Hess, a 5-time participant in this event with the best score of his, coming in 2nd place 1 year. We appreciate his insights. Back to you, Jen and Yaz.
Maurice, Robert, I can't let Robert leave without at least asking one question for the sports quotient, and that is the TPR. The tournament performance rating so far of Lenderman, I just think it's got to be off the chart, somewhere up there in the record books. Robert, what kind of a performance is this? I know it's going to be over 2,900, but just how high over 2,900?
Yeah, I think his tournament performance rating is somewhere in the 2,980 range. I haven't looked at it yet, but I don't think that can be the best, because I think players have started undefeated and had astronomical performance ratings. And realistically, that's bound to come down as the games progress and he makes a draw, ends up losing a game. But I mean, nobody could have. If you ask Alex himself, I don't think he could have expected his performance rating to be so far above his actual rating. It's 400 points, a great performance so far, and we'll really have to see if he keeps it up.
Indeed, 2,900 is pretty good. Sounds pretty good right now, but there's a long way to go.
Well, it's one of those mythical things that, in the most recent event that Magnus Carlsen played in, Magnus got off to a tremendous start as well, and they began talking about the first grandmaster ever in the history of chess to reach this mythical Mount Everest of 2,900.
And he's at a 2,880.
2,880 actual realized rating, and we have Lenderman, our tournament leader, playing at a 2,980 tournament performance rating after 4 rounds.
So he's better than Carlsen.
So he's putting in a performance greater than that of Magnus Carlsen's rating right now. And Robert, of course, is correct that to keep up this would be extraordinary, and we'd expect him to fall back. But at the moment, this game is wild. There's some opportunity still here for Lenderman as well to win this game.
Do you want to bring that game back up,
Sure.
the Ehrenberg-Lenderman game?
I was going to talk about Kamsky, but absolutely the tournament leaders
Oh God,
game.
you better keep drinking that green juice.
What's the green juice?
Every day.
Again? Yeah.
Every day.
Well,
Spinach, kale. I think there's some fruit in there too, so that it doesn't taste
okay.
like you're drinking a salad.
Right. Okay, so what we have is this current position, and Black's last move.
Right, Queen B6, this intrigued me.
Right. Well, first of all, again, we've been talking about this knight jumping and creating a discovered attack against the queen. So the queen got out of that discovery, and by the way, offered a little tickle threat of his own. Bishop c5 to f2 would be a double attack against the queen and the rook. And what Robert was talking about was dropping the bishop back to d3, trying to punch some weaknesses in Black's pawn shield. If Black played the move h7, h6, then we would expect this bishop, a very typical bishop type of sacrifice. Bishop takes h6, g takes h6, queen takes h6, with very frightening threats.
Well, yeah, it's just so hard for you to get your pieces back into the game. That's a problem.
Exactly. And I just wanted to show one checkmating pattern here that's very important for club players and players who are just starting.
Oh yes, this is a very important one.
Yeah, you just got to know this pattern inside and out.
Because instinctively you want to play queen h7 check and then queen h8 and see where that leads you. But it's not always the queen that's the star.
Exactly. So the idea here is White had the threat of queen h7 checkmate, so the rook makes room for the king to run. But instead of leading with the queen, that queen h7 checkmate, which we all want to do, first you play bishop h7 check. You force Black's king first into the corner. Now the bishop steps aside, so there's a discovered check against the king. The king has to go back, but notice that the bishop, which had originally, when we started, been positioned on the d3 square, has been transferred to the g6 square. So now, after queen h7 check, queen takes f7 checkmate. This is a classic checkmating pattern, and it's what you absolutely have to know this.
That's
so
right.
that in case opportunity knocks.
It's an important pattern, but even if you don't know a specific pattern, I think the lesson stands. You got to look at all the checks.
Sure.
So don't just get, a lot of people have tunnel vision. They look at queen h7 and they don't look at anything else.
Right.
And then they start going on that tunnel. And unfortunately, that happened to me a little bit earlier in this position, and we got a comment from one of our Twitter users, which I think was correct. We were looking at a line with bishop b4. Remember that one?
Yes.
Can we put it on the board?
Sure.
We were looking at.
I think it was without rook e1.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it came
exactly.
after
So we were
here,
looking at
knight
94,
bishop
b4, bishop takes b4, queen takes b4.
Yes.
Instead of bishop d3, the slower move.
Right.
There might be a bishop takes e6 here.
Ah, nasty. With
and now with the idea of pawn takes e6, knight f6.
Check. Picks up
the
queen. How sweet it is.
And we are letting go of stuff on e4, but the knight on d7 is hanging at the end of the variation. So.
But is that terrible?
That's not the end of the story, though, is it? Because of bishop takes g2, huh?
Right.
And then that restores pawn equality.
Mm-hmm. Back to material equality.
True, and I think that if we played like bishop d5, that would just be drawish, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so when you look at all the different exchanges here, actually, this seems like it's adequate for Black.
Well, the Sicilian is one of those animals that's really hard to beat, and sometimes you think you have a real good blow, and it's just not enough to win the game.
But still a very good question.
But here, queen b6, I'm expecting the move bishop d3, setting up these mating threats. I just did want to share one other checkmating idea. In case of g7, g6, in order to block this diagonal and not allow that bishop sacrifice that we just saw, well, notice after the move g7, g6, suddenly a lot of dark squares become weak in Black's camp, and White can offer an entire rook with this move bishop g5. For example, if you fall into the trap that I'm preparing, if you take the rook, well, guess what? There's a big checkmate staring you dead in the face with bishop f6 and queen g7 checkmate. So after g7, g6, that's a compromising move that just opens up a lot of dark square weaknesses in White's camp. And Alex Lenderman, our tournament leader, is going to have to find some nifty play not to get checkmate, to avoid checkmate.
Well, a lot
these
of times
checkmate's ideas.
He might try to shift his rook and bring the bishop back to f8 to cover up some of those squares.
Like,
kind of like a delayed fianchetto.
Like this type of thing, what you're suggesting, Jen, is just you got to get the rook on f8 out of the way so that the bishop can come back and defend these dark squares. And I completely agree with you on that. Spoken like a true Sicilianer, by the way.
Yeah, I want to turn it into a dragon.
Dragon lady. And how about how are the women doing? Irina? Oh, pardon me, I put up the...
Well, you put up another interesting game, at least.
Yeah, I did, but that was not my intent.
You were trying to pull up Irina Pasha's game against Kamila Bahinskaite.
And we were talking about how important it is for our two co-leaders to keep pace with one another. And we have an isolated queen-pawn position. Black's last move was likely this knight e4. Very nice by Kamila, bringing her knight into the center of the board, attacking the knight on c3. Irina played bishop b2, bringing her bishop onto this long diagonal. And now in a position like this, I would expect Kamila to want to complete her development with a move like bishop f5. And then it's another one of those strategic battles. Is the isolated pawn on d5 a weakness or a strength? The moment it's a strength because it's supporting the knight on e4. Long term, it could be a pawn weakness should White get her rooks centralized to the d file shortly.
So just a normal position so far in Crush Bahinskaite?
Yeah, nothing special going on there. I've always liked playing against isolated queen pawn. So
and I think that Irina plays these positions quite well. So
she does indeed. And then in the other, a wild, look at that, b7, b5 in our other tournament co-leader game in the women's section. Anna Zatonski-White against Victoria Nee. Victoria, unfortunately, you called it the basement at the moment. She understands that she's the clear underdog, and in the last position, Anna, pardon me, let me just take one more. Victoria had just played the move rook e8, putting pressure on the pawn on e4. Anna played the move knight on e2 to c3, giving extra protection to the pawn on e4, and then suddenly, bang, b7, b5 by Victoria saying, and you heard Maurice talking about that earlier, trading a flank pawn for a center pawn. Victoria saying, go ahead, capture my pawn on b5 if you like. I'll return the favor by capturing your central pawn, and that trade in principle should favor black. One thing that Anna might do to avoid that trade is, no, an idea that I was thinking about I believe is a little bit too dangerous. I was thinking about an idea like bishop f4, b5, knight b5 going after this pawn on c4, but I can see that this is...
Yeah, we've seen that little trick before in this championship. I think it's because a lot of times in these lines we have our bishop on e2, which I actually prefer.
Like, yeah, in a Benoni kind of position.
It's kind of nice. I always felt that the Benoni against the fianchetto lines is a little stronger.
Okay, but how about this? How about trying to exploit the fact that the bishop is actually on g2? Imagine this is a move.
True.
e4, e5.
True, there are some benefits.
So if you take with the pawn, I can play a move like this.
And then I'd be forced to play e4.
Exactly, and then I would be trying to exploit this diagonal with my bishop. Now on the other hand, if you
Or you could try like knight takes and queen d5 even.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing I would try to do, oops, that was not the rook sacrifice I had in mind. What I was trying to do was lure the rook to e5 so that when I took this pawn on b5, I would be able to attack the pawn on d6 with a tempo. I'm just wondering in this position whether black shouldn't just simply make an exchange sacrifice with a move like b4, b5, b5, b4, or even a7, a6, and really mix it up. I think that's what Victoria needs to do, by the way. I don't think she can play head-to-head against a player as powerful as Anna.
And this position is powerful as well.
Yeah.
So,
and so she needs to mix it up.
but she's starting off right, playing
Yes.
b5, and
Yes.
so honestly, both openings, they might be at the bottom of the tournament, but I think they're both proving themselves well in the opening stage at least.
Yeah,
you know?
resisting nicely.
And it's against two tough players who both have white. So
Absolutely.
Anna Zahansky and Irina Krush have their work cut out for them today. They both want to win and try to create some distance from their major rival.
Exactly.
And we'll be following it all. It looks like we're going to have a thrilling day today.
Yes, it's
So-
sure shaping up that way.
Sicilians, sacrifices, stay with us, and we'll be right back with more from the 2014 U.S. Championship. the 2014 U.S. Championship at the chess capital of America at the St. Louis Chess Club. And I'm sure all of you are getting sympathy here for poor Mr. Bisquire, right?
Yes, poor Arthur has been the punching bag for Bobby Fischer, it seems.
But if you're going to be a punching bag for anyone, let it be one of the legendary players of our time, right?
Except for this one small problem, all your losses are going to become world famous.
And the answer is G4. This move sets up a little tricky mating net, and Grandmaster Maurice Ashley is going to explain how.
Indeed, Jen, you do have to feel sorry for Bisquire, how he's just getting hit and pounded, and then showcased to the world how Bobby Fischer used to beat him up. But hey, what are you going to do? Fischer did find this spectacular way of concluding his attack. You see that Black's king position is definitely compromised. I mean, White's king position is definitely compromised. I mean, look at this. Rook attacking over here, bishop on this diagonal. Fischer just needed to throw one more spanner into the works, and that was the move. G4, beautiful move, opening up lines around that king. Bisquire played queen takes, pawn takes, only to be hit by this super subtle king to G7. Just march up. Now, of course, here comes the rook on the H file after a trade here, and the king is just caught from all angles, this way, that way, and that way. I mean, gee, what a vicious move that Fischer found. And now the rook left and went up to F5, thinking that maybe it could get to the H5 square and also attack the bishop, but Fischer hit him hard with rook takes H1, and it's all she wrote. The mating attack is coming. Bisquire resigned here because he realized that after king takes, he was done, out for the count after rook check, king up, pawn takes, pawn check. He could also maybe even play sweeter bishop check, king up, and rook mates. He could have prolonged it by throwing some pieces in the way, but that would have just been ridiculous. So a great finish by Fischer, showing his skill. Once again, he won a lot of games like this. Truly a great player was the American world champion. Back to you guys.
Wow, does he have to do 20 push-ups for that? Does that count as a back rank mate? It's too deep, right?
Nah, not quite a back rank mate.
Just some back rank variations in there.
Very nice.
But yeah, that was a deep combination, actually. That
Yes.
was a little harder than some of our other examples, wasn't it?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
kudos to those of you who did find it.
Absolutely, to solve that. I've been looking at our leaders game, Lenderman versus Sergei Ehrenberg. Things are really heated up. When we had left at the game a few moves back, we had anticipated this move bishop d3, and that was indeed the move that Sergei played. He's setting up for that checkmate that we saw. It did force this weakening move g7, g6. A lot of the dark squares around the black king are compromised now that the g7 pawn has been lured forward. And the move I didn't pay that much attention to, Jen, I don't know if you had anticipated this one either. Knight c3 to a4, attacking black's queen and trying desperately to eliminate that bishop, because if White could get rid of the dark squared bishop, as you showed, once the rook moved, you could bring the bishop home to defend the squares on the king side. So White definitely is looking to eliminate that bishop on c5.
So instead, Black probably took that knight because
had to.
That light squared bishop is, we like the light squared bishop too, but it's not as critical. After the g6 weakness occurs, the dark squared ones are the ones that we really need in the position for both sides.
Precisely.
Like as you see that bishop on d3 now, it's kind of not so powerful because on the c4 on the a2 g8 diagonal or on the b1 h7 diagonal, both times it's blunted, right? By pawns. Well, we do have a big result in, and Maurice, tell us what happened. A result already.
Indeed, it's not anything we want to see, but we kind of expected something like this, but not just so fast yet again. Kamsky has drawn with the black pieces. It looks like he couldn't do anything at all about Shanklin's opening. Shanklin was happy to get a draw, it looks like, after his devastating loss yesterday. So a poor result, I think, for both players. In fact, Kamsky stepping back a little bit, especially with the leaders looking to pad their lead. Gareev, if he wins, will be a full point ahead of Kamsky. And if our actual leader, Lenderman, wins, he'll be a point and a half ahead of Kamsky. So that's a very big result for this round. I'd also like to point out another game. Something bizarre happened in this position. Take a look. We saw the move B5 happen in our game with our co-leader, Anna Zatonsky, against Victoria Ni. Victoria played this move B5. How many times, Yaz, have you ever seen this as a response to such a move? E5. I mean, she was going to lose the E-pawn anyway, but to lose it in such a way seems strange. Rook takes on E5 was played, and now knight takes B5, but it seems like it's donated a tempo to black, giving black the move now, and Houdini's saying, I don't get it either. This position looks great. What about just a tempo game with a move like bishop to G4? Look at this sweet square. Bishop can come into E2 and attack this rook and knight, and suddenly it's black who's taking over the initiative. A very simple move, bishop G4, maybe the most natural move on the board. So I don't know what Zatonsky's thinking about. She might have already put herself in trouble with such a strange move, E5. And if she spotted the move bishop G4 now, look at her head in her hands, she might be aware that she's opened up options for Ni. And if she were to lose this game, it would be devastating for her because her co-leader, Irina Krush, she will keep on rolling knowing that Zatonsky has made such a big slip. Back to you guys.
Well, thank you, Maurice. I will definitely come back to that because, funnily enough, I actually was considering the move E4, E5 with bishop F4, not knight takes B5. I was expecting bishop F4 drive the rook back first and then capture the pawn. But let me just stay with the leaderboard for a moment. Our tournament leader, I beg your pardon, Lenderman, because there's some really interesting tactics that are being featured in this game. And after queen takes A4, we now have an attack on against the knight on D7. Alex didn't move the knight or defend the knight. Instead, he created his own counter threat of checkmate in one move. He moved his bishop to D4, threatening the pawn on B2, and queen takes B2 checkmate. Sergei thwarted that threat with the move C2, C3, attacking the bishop as well as the knight, and now two of black's pieces are en prise. Lenderman to play. I'm anticipating the move knight C5.
Right.
Attacking the queen, attacking the bishop. If we capture the bishop in this case, then after a move like rook D8 attacking the queen, this bishop on D3 is the problem for white here. But check this out, Jen. The bishop is actually a little bit trapped. If we drop back with the queen, the knight is going to have to capture queen takes, and I'm not sure that bishop on D4 is going to be able to cover all of the dark square weaknesses on black's king. In other words, if we drop back with the bishop with bishop C5, I would anticipate white trying to sink his bishop, go bishop G5 to F6, restrict black's king, and set up all kinds of mating nets that you and I are very well aware. So,
that's right, and something like rook C8 would just delay the inevitable, huh?
Well,
no, I mean instead of once your bishop's already in D4, instead of moving it.
Oh, you mean in this position you could? I beg your pardon. You could play. You're not necessarily forced either to go to F2 or to C5, but rather rook C8. Keeping that pin.
But the problem is then you can play bishop G5 anyway.
Right, I still want to set...
It doesn't look like we really have any extra tactics here.
Right, if I could set that bishop up very nicely on the F6 square, there'll be a host of checkmating patterns down the road here for white.
But was it forced to take on D3?
I thought so. Maybe I'm wrong. There is this move bishop F2, this tempo against the rook.
And then maybe following that up with rook D8 or something. So perhaps there's a little more to look at here, and we should get back to this game. But
sure.
For now, we had in studio Grandmaster Sam Shanklin with Maurice Ashley.
Thanks, Jen. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So you had a tough game yesterday, and
say
then
the
you
least.
get Kamsky.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
it's tough.
Today you drew
Yeah.
with the white pieces. It seemed like you played very fast and got a decent position, but then nothing came up.
Well, I played a kind of psychological game. After the line I played after A takes B5, Black has two main choices. After A takes B5, the way he played Black's very slightly worse and has to defend for a few moves. But then I think Kamsky's clearly up to the task and he'll make the draw. But C takes B5 is extremely dynamic. And I figured he's only on +1 so far, and he probably still is trying to win the tournament, win every game. I was hoping he would play C takes B5. And then we have a very dynamic and very interesting position where it's very complicated, but my assessment was White's a little better. And he said he considered it, but he also came to the same conclusion in his analysis and didn't want to play a worse position. So
did he seem upset about only drawing the game? I mean, after all,
No, I don't
Garev
think
is looking good against Akobian. He might be going even a step back in his game.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think God is the kind of guy who looks at other boards at all. He just focuses on the one in front of him and makes what he believes is the best decision. And I think he chose not to go into the more complicated game. Although, I don't know. I mean, I was really hoping we would get something like that. But another thing was he's plays so many openings. I had to prepare for so much different things. I just kind of wanted to check the briar. I'm like, all right, he hasn't played this in a while, but if he does, I'll test him, see if he wants to fight, and if he does, I'll probably get a better position. But if not, he'll do what he does best, make a few good moves, and hold the draw with Black.
So you seem a little disappointed by the result. I mean, your game yesterday wasn't great, and your standing in the tournament is a little shaky now.
No, it's I haven't been. I think I've both been not playing my best chess and catching some poor breaks, which when that goes together, it's very hard to recover from. So just the same way when you're playing really well and you're getting lucky, like what happened in my last tournament, you're basically unstoppable. So with any luck, I'll start playing better and my luck will start turning around. I have Lunderman tomorrow, who I've historically scored very well against, and he's leading the tournament. So it's very possible I can have a good game, and maybe if I manage to win, I'll shake the standings up a little bit and get back on track. But he's a very strong player, so that's a huge assumption to make.
Okay, well, we wish you the best in the rest of your games.
Thanks.
Grandmaster Sam Shanklin making a draw against the top-rated player, Gata Kamsky. Back to you guys.
The U.S. champion, Gata Kamsky, again, only managing 4 draws out of his 5 rounds thus far. I was thinking before the tournament, a result like +4 would win the event. +3 is going to get us into a tiebreaker.
That'll be fun.
And Gata, at this moment, he's not even averaging +3. So we might be witnessing a crowning of a new
takeover.
U.S. champion. And I'm looking at this game, Lenderman, because it is. I'm riveted to the game.
Yeah, it is really exciting. So it looks like a move was just played by Lenderman.
Okay, well, let's go back. This is kind of where we were looking at this move by Alex setting up a checkmate in one threat. We anticipated the move C3, and now because 2 black pieces are hanging, we thought that knight C5 was forced. That was placed.
Knight C5 is forced because if knight takes E5.
Oh, pardon me. If knight takes E5, and these 2 pieces are kind of connected with one another, the bishop might just drop back. And if the bishop moves, the knight is lost, and if the knight moves, the bishop is lost. So I don't think that black could get away with that pawn nibble, knight takes E5. What Lenderman, I think, did play, however, was the move knight C5, what we had anticipated. The queen has dropped back.
And now we were mentioning, you were talking about knight takes D3, how that looked very good for white. So we just started to discuss the possibility of bishop F2 instead.
And now we're anticipating.
And now with the idea of move like rook D2 or something like that. I mean rook D8.
Well, we could play rook D8 and pick up a tempo against this bishop, but we in turn may be we may fall into a tempo ourselves. I was thinking that the bishop might just want to drop back. Again, I'm thinking to try to cover some dark squares over here on the king side and maybe keep that trade in reserve, not just jump on capturing the bishop. That's a judgment call. That's a hard one to make. What you were talking about there, Jen, was that in case of rook F1, rook D8, bishop g5. Just be a little cautious that that pawn on f7 doesn't get lopped off. But we do have in our studios a defending U.S. champion 5 times defending U.S. champion Gata Kamsky with Maurice Ashley.
I believe it's 4 times. Gata can correct me if I'm wrong. And he's won the last 2 years, in fact. So definitely a favorite in this event. Gata, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Gata, this game, we see a draw. You played the Briar. Your opponent played some quick moves really early on, but it seemed like he couldn't get any advantage right away.
Well, in these days, it's very difficult to get an advantage in any opening, I mean, with all the computer preparation. But I had to look a lot of openings, and I wasn't sure what to play until the last moment, and then I settled for something really solid because Sam has been improving very steadily for the last few years, and he plays very sharp chess, and since my form here is not that great, I didn't want to take chances and play something really solid here.
So you said your form is not that great. Right now you're at +1 after 5 rounds. We see Lenderman, who's just really stormed ahead so far, and Gev, who's also starting to pick up. What do you need to do to get yourself back in the competition?
Well, it's a complicated question. There are a lot of factors involved because you need good preparation, good form, and also need luck and help from your opponents. And those are main components for a victory. And in this tournament, I can see that a lot of people prepared really well. I can see them preparing maybe for a month or 2 for this event. And this shows because the quality of their games is really high. I don't see many blunders in this tournament, and they're all eager to win. And, I'm just playing my chess, and probably I would say that we're going to see a new U.S. champion this year, probably.
Wow!
Probably.
That's an amazing statement coming from the defending champion. That's a pretty radical thought. Now it's only 5 rounds in.
Right, but okay, I'm content. As long as I play well, that's all I care about. So, but okay, today's game, it was pretty solid, so I wouldn't say it's very exciting. Sam also didn't want to take any chances, and because he saw the possibility that he might get worse, and it was a good game, professional draw. But we have some other games in the event today.
All right, what other games have caught your eye so far?
There was this game, was Friedel versus Anishuk.
Okay, Onishuk also having won his game yesterday, so he's trying to get maybe a solid position here, or you like white?
Well, it is the question because black does have an extra pawn, but white has a superior Catalan bishop here. So he sacrificed the pawn for some initiative, and the rook is on the 7th rank, which is really unpleasant for black. I would say it's about even, but there is a lot of excitement here, and any single mistake can cost either player a game.
Would you prefer to have black or white in this position?
It's a difficult question. I'm sure Vladimir Kramnik would prefer white here, because he plays the system. And there was some other game I think I saw, but I
think you mentioned Ehrenberg Lenderman, maybe?
Right, Lenderman.
This is our key game for the leadership board.
Right. And Lenderman is extremely resourceful player. So I wouldn't count him out, but to me, he is slightly worse here, but maybe he can pull it out. I'm not sure.
His preparation has been really sterling in at least a couple of games in the tournament so far.
Absolutely. I mean, he was always a hard-working guy, so, kudos to him, as we say.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck in the rest of your games.
Thank you, Maurice.
With 4-time U.S. champion Gata Kamsky, predicting a new U.S. champion, that's breaking news to me, guys. What do you think? Back to you, Jen and Yaz.
I still got my money riding on Gata.
Oh,
yeah. I think Gata is a great finisher.
Okay, he's not in the room anymore, so you can say what you really think.
Oh, well, now, yeah. I'll take back my wager in that case. No, I think that Gata is a great finisher. I don't count him out of any event until literally it's over.
That's right, and you know how chess players are so superstitious. They say that.
Right.
I feel like if they say they're gonna win, it sounds like it's jinxing themselves.
Exactly.
So maybe it's the opposite effect. Like, I'm probably not gonna win this year.
Precisely. Downgrading their chances and things like that. But no, he's just he doesn't come across in this soft-spoken way, but he's a real warrior at the chessboard.
Oh yeah.
I've never seen, maybe with the exception of Walter Brown, somebody who works so hard at the board, over the board. And although he keeps that stoic demeanor, what goes on, his calculations are really fantastic. So I still see all he needs is another win to get some wind in his sails. And interestingly enough, this, our key game, was turning into our key game. Our tournament leader just came up with a different move, very, very interesting move. Queen, we were just looking at this bishop moving because after all the bishop was on pre, but Queen C2 sets up a pretty nice tactic. The bishop is, we cannot capture the bishop because of knight takes d3, and there's a sudden pin on the c-file. After king c1, black would win the exchange and the game in this fashion that we're seeing. So white couldn't play to capture the bishop, but I saw a very attractive looking move in this move, bishop h6, trying to get over, playing to attack the rook on f8, and at the same time defending this bishop on d3, so that now the capture of the bishop is a real threat.
Now maybe we can take on e5.
Okay, but then we're in an exchange sacrifice kind of situation. You get a pawn and a good dark square bishop, I'll give you that, a good dark square bishop
But you
for an
certainly
exchange.
like white. Dado.
Yeah, I mean, I think that white should be for choice. Maybe it's not that big an advantage, but white should be for choice.
Now, we do have some questions coming in about these games, and Chess.com is sponsoring prizes for best questions in this tournament for kids, including the kids who come physically to the club. So all of you parents out here, bring your kids to the club. And those of you who are adults, go to Twitter, ask a question using the hashtag USChessChamps, or you can email us at comments@stlouischessclub.org. And some of the comments we've gotten about this game is, well, Matt Barrett, who is actually working with us at the club, says that
trying to win a membership, is he?
He would prefer the white pieces in Ehrenberg Lendenman. So he agrees with Gata Kamsky. Can't go wrong, right?
Right.
And then we have Joe Arjevic, who says that just one more demonstration of why playing the Sicilian is so exhilarating. Agreed.
You can count on a sharp battle.
And then we also have Richard Ingram, who talks about another game, but he says that he's really excited about the Robson-Naroditsky game because he played 6 bishop a4 against the Berlin defense yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So, prescient.
Serendipity. Serendipity. Well, let's just take a quick look at that Ray Robson game, because after all, Ray did start with a very sharp pawn sacrifice. Perhaps Maurice prepared? No, we'll come back to the game directly on my board.
Yeah, I think he's got another game he wants to talk to us about.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me bring up Daniel and...
Yeah, let's move on to Maurice while you get that set up.
Okay.
He's got something for us with Ramirez and Molnar.
Indeed, we haven't been paying attention to this game. So many interesting games on tap today, but this one is also super interesting. We've seen an exchange sacrifice happen on this board in a position that you like, Yaz. So you'll have something to say. It's an English variation, of course, English opening, and in this position, white with this beautiful fianchetto bishop along the diagonal decided, well, it's beautiful, but double pawns might be even juicier. Bishop takes on c6, pawn takes, and knight to c4. Now, of course, black's pawn formation is compromised here, so white looking to get an edge there. The attack on the e5 pawn was met by ignoring it. Bishop to h3, attacking the rook, to which white said, I'll ignore that too. Give me that pawn. And after bishop, he could have taken on f1, but he decided first to play the move bishop to f6. Of course, if he had taken on f1, let me back that up so you can see it. If he had taken on f1, sorry, must get rid of that move. If he had taken on f1, then he would have had to consider the variation knight takes on c6 first, forking queen and bishop, followed by capturing this bishop on e7 and then capturing on f1. So instead of doing that, after knight takes e5, black played the move bishop to f6, preserving his bishop. And now knight c6, queen to d7. This knight has nowhere to go back toward the center, so it had to go over to the side, and now he snapped the exchange. However, white has two pawns. He picked off the e pawn and the c pawn in this position. And look at this next sequence, rook a to b8, putting pressure down using his extra exchange, even though down 2 pawns on the b file. And Ramirez here played the move knight to d1, guarding the b2 square. Very strange move to my eyes, but a rich game in that position, really interesting. I also want to point out the other game, Melekina versus Iswaran. This game proceeded with the move after a6. The youngster played bishop d3 and now knight to d5, leaping into the center. It seems as though she solved most of her problems. The position could get very sharp, but she's threatening on c3 and threatening the pawn on f4, and any trade in the center will bring black's position back to harmony, no weaknesses. So it looks as though the youngster has solved most of her problems and maybe trying to get back into the driver's seat, and it looks as though the trade in fact did happen on the board, knight takes d5. So seems like Iswaran should be fine. She's now taking back with the e-pawn, and Houdini is saying this position right here is better for black, in its opinion. That would be an amazing development for the young 13-year-old if she could pull off yet another surprising victory here at the U.S. Women's Championship. Back to you guys.
I definitely agree with Houdini that black has solved her opening problems after being surprised with this b4 wing gambit.
Right, that center control. And, you know, if she strings together enough victories, we can't call them surprises anymore.
That is true. That is true. I have on my screen the game between Ray Robson and Daniel Naroditsky, two of the youngest players in this year's U.S. Championship, facing off. When we had left it, this, to my eyes, well, to my knowledge, I meant to say, I wasn't familiar with this pawn sacrifice. Houdini thinks that it's just fine for white, and the game developed as we are seeing now. Daniel didn't try to maintain his extra pawn. Instead, he gave it back in order to trade a lot of pieces. Those trades drop back with his knight, and we'll catch up to what is the position on the board shortly. So we have still the same kind of balanced pawn structures that we get with those rookie Juan Berlin variations, 4 versus 4 on the queen side, 3 versus 3 on the king side. First impression is that white should be a little bit better. This bishop on a4 does, for the moment, have one impactful thing, that it does prevent black from challenging the e-file if white is able to maintain his rooks on the e-file, double his rooks on the e-file, he'll have an advantage. But I can see that white has also to be careful that black is about to play queen f6 and things like bishop g4 and knight f4 to disrupt the smooth winning ideas that white may have. So just a small edge in this game for Ray Robson, looking to bounce back in after his defeat yesterday.
Now, another game that we had our eyes on was Guraev, who's trailing Lenderman by just half a point. And we really liked his game against Akobian after Akobian
errored.
Yes, he
queen
missed
g5,
this
king e2.
King e2 idea, very pretty. And
let's see how.
Now, we had expected that Guraev might try to really capitalize on that in castle queenside, but instead he chose to castle kingside, thinking that even in the same castle position that he would be able to get a lot of initiative by playing e4 at the right moment.
Right. So this was the moment where Var uncorked the Howler queen g5, wrongly thinking that he was picking up a tempo against the pawn on g2. Guraev challenged him to take the pawn. Discretion's the better part of valor. Var dropped back with his queen, ceding the tempo, and this is exactly the moment where you and I both thought that if we were going to see fireworks, this is the moment. Let's castle queen side, and then let's rock on the king side. That didn't happen, unfortunately. Castle, a solid move, but not the exciting move we were hoping for. Knight went to b6, so What VAR is hoping is that he will be able to play bishop f5 shortly, trade bishops, and work his way to a balanced position. But e3, e4, definitely when your opponent's king is still in the center of the board, try your very best to open up the position.
Well, bishop h3 was in the air, but after e4, certainly not recommended.
Exactly. Now, e3, e4 sets up e4, e5 with a double attack against the queen and the knight. This was met, I believe, by the trade. So we have trades, 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 and Black's king is still stuck in the center.
Because we can't castle because the h7 is hanging, so that's really annoying.
Yes.
That's one of the things that extra tempo gives Gray, those little finesses at the end of the line.
Precisely. And now the big question is, can White capitalize on this? If VAR was to make this pooch of a move, h7, h6, clearly telegraphing that his intention is to castle, how can White blow up the position to take advantage of his superior development? He's got to do something very, very quick. I can imagine a rover coming up, you know, this type of thing, getting your rook over on the third rank. I could also imagine, Gariev did it in a previous round, doing a rover using this rook on a1 to come, pardon me, it wasn't Gariev, it was Onishuk who played that rook a3 idea.
Okay.
And so White needs to come up with some very precise, aggressive, attacking ideas. Should VAR lay down a challenge and say, do your best, I'm going to castle on my next turn, I'll play h7, h6, not giving up the pawn on h7. So a tense moment here.
So advantage Grayev, but plenty of fight left in the position. Well,
without question.
This might be the most exciting round we have yet, and we're going to take a quick commercial break, but come back for a lot more action and a thrilling set of openings.
Yes.
We are back at the 2014 U.S. Championship, and we have some worried faces. This is halfway into the time control. Gev-Akobian and Alyssa Melikina, not happy with some of the developments that have occurred in our second hour of play here at the championship and the women's championship. Now, some players will have their heads like this regardless of the position.
Right.
And we do have more from Grandmaster Ashley on one key battle in the women's championship.
Actually, on a few key battles in the women's championship, it looks as though Melekina has definitely misplayed this opening, or at least that the youngster has outplayed her from what looked like her great preparation. Now the young Ashrita Esweran has a great looking position, and in this case right here, the position, if we jump back just a bit, after knight takes on d5, we saw the move e takes d5 get played. Melekina played this move, preventing the pawn from going to c4, but after a simple trade, king to g7, the computer like king to h8, but still thinks this position is better for black, and now black is going to be able to put a knight on d4 and threaten the move b5 at the moment. It's suggesting actually a4 is the best move, but knight to d4, and you got to look at black's position and say, what's wrong with black's game? Black is also threatening the move b5 again because of potential along this long diagonal. For example, after the move king to h1, black may consider the move b5 anyway, because a trade here and a capture on this square would lead to this variation. By the way, not necessarily that bad for white. Maybe something Alyssa has to bail out and go for down at exchange, but having two pawns, she'd be praying that she doesn't lose it somehow after rook a1 happening in the position. So definitely a challenge for her. But if we jump over to another game, Crush Braganskaite, this game looks really good. If I can just get the screen looks frozen. Let's just go to the position. This game, it looks as though white is much better here. White has, according to the computer, a full point edge right now. It thinks that a pawn is going to be won guaranteed, at least after this move, rook to d5, because that isolated pawn, the queen and rook with power. If a queen moves over to c8 now the move knight to g5, and all of white's pieces are starting to stream into this position. Black looks like she's in a lot of trouble here. Even a move looks very calm like this one could be met by something really aggressive here and a capture on this square, and suddenly things are blowing up on this side of the board already. Black might have to bail out by throwing something in the way. So white looks for choice there. On the other hand, take a look at the game between Zatonsky and Nee. Bishop g4 was played, and now f3, giving away a pawn. She could just take on d5. So got it. The problem is, of course, that in the long run, this diagonal might open up. So let's say, for example, a move like queen a4, the bishop could drop back maybe and be aggressive. This move f4 always has to be considered. So some wild things happening in the women's games. No surprise, though, guys. Women are always playing wild and crazy chess. But we'll see what happens in the next few moves here at the U.S. Chess Championships. Back to you.
We're going to have to call it the Dragon Ladies U.S. Championship.
Wait, is Dragon Ladies a good thing or a bad thing?
It's both. In Vietnam, Dragon Ladies are considered prima donnas, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful women. And when we think of the dragon, we think of the fire-breathing, not the shrew, but
you're digging yourself deeper.
I know.
I
better escape at this point and say hi, everyone. Yes.
To that Kasparov Polgar game.
Wasn't that wonderful? That was yeah. Judith winning against the legendary Garry Kasparov.
Ehrenberg Lenderman, we've got a move there.
Okay,
what happened there? Did we see this yet? I thought we were just looking at analysis after. Knight c5, queen c2, queen c7.
I have a little bit of a problem on my internet connection, so I'm not being able to pull up the game. So instead of bishop h6, a move that caught my eye going into that exchange,